fun question.
People are like traps. There are a lot, and I'm not going to name them.
Really good examples.
When they come back and say, hey, I didn't realise I was now locked in for 3 months.
Welcome, everyone, to our podcast, E-Commerce Legend, the podcast that shines a light on e-commerce brands and partners. Today, we're thrilled to introduce you to George Lorrain, a man who is shaking things up in the world of online customer care. Currently, George is the expansion manager at Onepilot, one of the fastest growing tech companies in Europe. Onepilot is on a mission to revolutionize how companies interact with their customers by making customer care outsourcing simple and flexible. Over the past year, more than 2 million end users have reached out to Onepilot, receiving quality instant responses 24/7 across all channels. If you've ever purchased from Victoria's Secret, Adore Me, or even cult French brand Cézanne, you've probably been in contact with Onepilot's service. Before Onepilot, George cut his teeth at Brandbassador, an ambassador marketing management platform. He climbed the ranks from being an SDR all the way to senior account exec and head of sales development. And if you thought e-commerce and customer care are his only tricks, think again. Outside of his job, George has dedicated time to sports coaching, fundraising for the Teenage Cancer Trust, and student mentoring, proving that he's a man of heart who invests in his community. George, welcome to our podcast. We can't wait to hear your stories and insights on e-commerce expansion and customer care.
Best introduction I've ever heard. It's not nice introduction. Great to be here. Really appreciate the intro, and excited to dive into the world of customer care.
Same here. We're so happy that you're here with us. So, a little bit about Onepilot. Could you share with us the story behind Onepilot, how it became one of the fastest growing tech companies in Europe?
Yeah, so the story goes back. So it's 5 co-founders. Mm-hmm. The background, I won't go to each individual one, but the background is like working with e-commerce, VC, investment banking, also building their own SaaS companies as well. 2 of which school child friends, which is normally how most good businesses start, going back to the early days. But they all had a lot of shared experiences in working with BPO, so business process outsourcing,
right.
what we call an outsourced partner, if you like. Or an outsourced business. And they all had challenges, whether it's building internal CS teams, outsourcing to offshore teams, because that's just the normal thing to do to keep costs down. And they're all just sick and tired, saw a gap in the market just before COVID, and it all came together. And what we are now just over 2 years in, and we've just reached 10 million ARR. So in the context of SaaS and growth, it's been a success. A long way to go, but so far so good.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
And so how would you say Onepilot differs from the traditional call centers, and, if there are any unique advantages that you guys offer?
Yeah, so the question we always get a lot is like, who are your competitors? And to be honest, there are thousands, because loads of companies outsource customer support. It's nothing new. Like, it's something that's always existed. Our approach is really different, and it's basically just tech driven. So the idea behind it is, and again, it goes back to the founder story, like they saw, common pain points of like, it's hard to scale, it wasn't flexible. If you got at a cost efficient scenario, it was just through offshore. You couldn't do nearshore in a cost efficient way. But yeah, so how we're different, it comes down to our tech. So if you think of it in 2 areas, the first, the help desk. So a lot of companies will be using, whether it's like Gorgeous, Intercom, Zendesk, there's a lot of players, won't list them all. The first side of our tech integrates into those platforms. So in a nutshell, something that takes an agent 6 or 7 minutes, because we've got over 50 integrations pulling in the relevant information, something that might take an internal agent 5 or 6 minutes, we'll do it in 2 or 3. So the idea is the one side of our tech maximizes the agent's efficiency, so they can do more with less, which is on everyone's mind in e-commerce.
Right.
The other element of our tech is we've got our own platform that allows agents to get up and running really quickly. So we actually call them heroes. So if I use the word hero, we don't call them agents. I'll actually get in trouble when they watch this back. I call them agents.
You can call them heroes from now on.
Yeah, so they're all heroes. But yeah, the idea is really simple. So obviously the tech, the boring side, all the integrations, but our real USP is that we've built our own platform where, we've got our own learning management system, so we can get agents up and running really quickly. So instead of hiring, training, recruiting, some will leave because CS is a really hard job. Like, you're literally dealing with all the crap, basically, right? Like, a lot of it is complaints, it's problems, it's a challenging day-to-day role. So the idea is that instead of having to go through that long process, our tech can get an agent up and running with a brand overnight. And yeah, I guess the easiest way to visualize it, like how it works or explain it, and we talked a little bit about this before, how I get in trouble for using the Uber analogy. If you think like the Uber model, like per trip, a driver gets per trip per pay, and a freelance model, we've built that for agents. So locally native matchmaking, so relevant brands working for relevant heroes, working with brands that they like, and it's our tech that brings it all together. And because it's on a freelance per ticket model, it just unlocks a load of flexibility. So if you think about, I'm going off here, but if you think about the revenue line for an e-commerce brand, it's not flat, right?
No,
like, you've got Q4, we saw COVID, you've got summer dips, Q1 drop-offs, you name it. And the idea is that it's really hard to scale that internally, right? You have to hire, you have to train, you have to let people go, you have to hire temps. And the whole point of Onepilot is that we can kind of follow that curvature, whether it's up or down. But so it's a long, but some of the bits on how we're a little bit different. Yeah,
learning about how you guys work, and definitely I think these people are heroes. No question.
Well, we can all remember the best and worst examples of customer support, right? So I think that's the kind of like the key, and just having like the right hero delivering the right human touch point where necessary. So yeah, that's kind of the model and how we're different. And they're all, as I mentioned, locally native, but they all work from home. So they pick and choose the channels they work, they pick and choose the brands that they want to shift for. So it's a real give and get. And when we do things like this and we talk about the product and the value it brings to brands, what kind of goes undermined a little bit is we've actually created a really awesome environment for people to earn extra money or to do it full time. It's completely up to them. Answering tickets, because they've all got 2 years experience in it. That's kind of the requirement. But they all get to work from home however they want, choose the hours they want, which in the CS world, comparing it to a call center on not the best pay, to be brutally honest, it's quite a nice model for our heroes.
Definitely. Also, they get to sort of choose the experience that they want to evolve in, and also contribute to furthering the brand's experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And so, we're talking about customer experience. It's definitely crucial to the e-commerce sector. Can you tell us a bit more about the innovations, the technologies that Onepilot has implemented in this realm?
I mean, AI, elephant in the room. Everyone's which is kind of a bit boring now, because I think everyone's talking about it, but who's actually doing it? But AI's on everyone's mind. I guess one of the things, I'll probably get in trouble if I were to share everything. I probably wouldn't be welcome back in the office if I shared what's coming up. But I think one of the things we've implemented, or 2 things that we've implemented in the last 6 months that are really, I think they're interesting. The first one's called Cockpit. Basically means when an agent starts a shift, we can track like what they're doing and how they're doing it, not to like monitor them or like, let's say like an Amazon like negative scenario. It's more about like coaching them, but getting like all the right data points, like how can we make their processes even better, like so they can earn more, reduce the cost for the brand. But also from like a data and security point of view, being everything tracked is an absolute must for all brands. The other thing I quite like, and I guess just to give you more context, every employee at Onepilot has to do tickets. So I'm not going to say I'm a hero or anything, but the idea is that every month we all do 30 tickets. So, we're in there, we know the processes. When something's wrong with the product or we can see areas of improvement, we're all kind of all hands on deck. But the idea, sorry, I've lost my chain of thought there.
So you're a hero?
Yeah, so go back to the question. So the hero,
you were discussing AI and then the first one was Cockpit, the second,
exactly. Thank you. So if you think about being an agent, you get a ticket, like I want to cancel my order, subscription, or whatever it could be. And you have to go into, whether it's Shopify, Magento, you've got to go into like the warehouse management system. You've got all these different areas and processes you have to follow. Our AI is along with the integrations and the AI, we've got we call it a knowledge base. It's basically a playbook that helps the heroes solve their tickets. And every time a suggestion comes in, we'll detect the sentiment and the most likely relevant answer that will help solve that ticket. So basically, we've just cut out a dozen manual steps that an agent would be doing in a call center or internally in a traditional format. So it's really simple. They've got gorgeous on one screen, knowledge base on the other. Here's the ticket. Here's probably the most relevant answer and suggestion. But it's always a human signing off, which is quite important to us. We don't want to be like bots, because I think we hate dealing with customer service in e-commerce, and trying to bypass the bots a bit of a headache. So the idea is that we automate all those manual steps, and then the agent can spend time personalizing the response, going that extra mile basically. So they're the two things in terms of tech that I think are most interesting, and obviously a lot more coming, but I won't
you can't get into too much trouble.
Well, I'll lose my job otherwise, won't I? Maybe not, but
okay, so AI essentially helping to improve the customer experience for the people who are waiting for answers on their tickets, but also internally for the actual heroes dealing with these tickets, because they don't have to go through as many manual steps.
Well, yeah, like do more with less, right? So whether it's like an internal team, whether it's a call center type business or our model, you want to get agents being able to do as many tickets per hour as possible, right? Because then it's cost effective for the brand, but then in the context of our freelance model, our agents earn more. So it's in everyone's interest. Going back to the first question as well, and where we are different, if you think about traditional outsourcing, and this isn't news, thousands of companies do this, you'll say, right, here's my forecast of tickets, okay, you're going to need, and then they'll come back saying you'll need X number of agents, and you'll pay them X per hour. But then the problem with that is, how do you know how many tickets they're going to solve per hour? You're not paying for a productive minute, and you shouldn't, because that's a slippery slope, i.e. Amazon. But the idea being like, when someone does go to the toilet, or they're on holiday, or all these perks and benefits, you're paying for those. Whereas our model is like, per ticket, that's it. And it's in the interest of the brand, it's in the interest of the hero, which I think is, really important. So everyone wins, basically,
Yeah, definitely. And so we also know that Onepilot has successfully expanded to the UK, Germany, and soon Spain. Especially as an expansion manager, what challenges did you face when entering these markets? And maybe a little bit on how you overcame those? Yeah,
so we recently launched in the Netherlands as well, which is a really interesting market, because it's really hard to hire. Yeah, it's really hard market to hire for customer support in the Netherlands. So it's obviously great for us, but it's really interesting market. I think the benefit we've had, and what I'd recommend, is that we really focused early on brands that had a presence in those markets.
Okay.
So, for example, we looked at our French customer base, which obviously is we're a French company, and then we were like, which of these have just a tiny presence, whether it's 10 tickets a day, 1,000, it doesn't matter, and let's just focus on those. So we would almost build the infrastructure up based on what we already had in place, as opposed to going to market and hiring a complete dedicated ops team. This is obviously going back 8-9 months, but instead of just going complete, we already basically leveraged our internal infrastructure, if you like. So the first step, and what really made it a lot simpler, was just nailing a process that we already had, but by just really trying to get the confidence with existing clients, even if it's a small number of tickets in the context of how we help them, to basically start there, basically aim small, miss small. Once we've got that proof of concept, then it's easy, because we've got marketing collateral, we've got English-speaking agents in the context of growing in the UK. So that's really, I guess, how we overcame it. I think the other thing that came to mind is we were always really conservative on how many heroes, but also just full-time pilots. When I say pilot, I mean like a Onepilot employee. Okay. Again, that's our other internal slang. But again, we were just really conservative, aim small, miss small. Again, what can we leverage in the existing market, as opposed to just going all in? We're now at nearly 40 brands in the UK, which is great. We obviously work in other industries, but to be honest, 90% of our business is e-com, that kind of Shopify, Magento, that kind of classic tech stack that we're all seeing. yeah, it's been interesting. Obviously, with my role, just taking everything to the UK market, it's been really fun. But there's a real need for it, which is the best thing, right? In software and working in e-commerce, brands actually need what you're offering, which is a great seat to be in, I think.
Yeah, great seat as a pilot.
Yeah, and this seat. Yeah.
And so, you mentioned that you work with over 40 brands in the UK. Do you have a few success stories to share with specific brands and how they enhance their customer care?
Yeah, so there's a few... Yeah, loads of different, and this is the thing with support, right? Every brand's different, like processes, customers, like how many SKUs. The one that comes to mind, which is more recent, so we started working with them at the start of the year, Hagley West. So I don't know if you guys know Hagley West in France, maybe not.
Maybe not.
So they're the fastest growing watch brand in the world.
Okay.
It's one of the most, if you're interested in like social and e-commerce, which obviously we all are, go onto TikTok, go onto Hagley West. Their account, and they've basically just leveraged their entire growth through TikTok. So their founder Tim, you'll find him. Just go on Hagley West's social page. He does these like Find Tim challenges, and there's a point to this story where he recently just come from the US and he was going state to state to state and doing these live challenges. Basically, come and find me, I'll give you a free watch.
Okay.
And people that have never even heard of the brand are like coming out in the masses, the woodworks, finding him. He's got like 100 people in like North Carolina trying to find him.
Wow.
But he was tapping into all these reaches. But the reason they're a success story, even though we've only been working with them for a few months, is because with a brand like that, their revenue is literally like this. I mean, all the numbers they share transparently, but one weekend they might get 10 tickets. One weekend it could be 15, 20x, right? How do you deal with that as an internal team? You just can't, right? You just can't scale the headcount because your revenue might be here and you might hire that many, FTE, but then when your revenue drops, you're left with that pricing, like infrastructure, which no brand wants. Like everyone wants, variable over fixed costs. So that's kind of the model we unlock. Other success stories, maybe... do you know Heights? They're like a cool supplements UK brand. Russell Brand is always actually endorsing them.
Okay.
So always gets like a mixed feedback because he's like the Marmite character for the UK. You either love him or you hate him. But their use case is really simple. Like 3 or 4 times a year, the entire company goes offline for an offsite.
Okay.
So in the context of CS, what do? Do you just shut off CS for 4 days? Probably not a good idea. Do you punish 1 or 2 of your team members to, man the fence and until you come back? Not fair either. So their use case, and one of our USPs is they use us for a low level of tickets, and then as soon as they got their offsite, they go, right, guys, just handle it while we're gone. And then when they come back in 4 days, it's like, okay, cool, breathe, no backlogs, we can relax, and we can just business as usual. And then, loads of success stories, but they're all different, which is, again, why I find it quite an interesting space, to be honest.
If you want to share one more,
Sure. So the one, and this is non-e-commerce, but it's I find it staggering. Okay. So there's a company called Conto. So you might have heard of yeah. So because of their acquisition of Penta, their use case, they needed to be able to hire 100 agents in 4 weeks. Good luck doing that with an outsourced partner. But again, because of our tech, where we can, to begin with, get them in the funnel, get them up to speed really quickly. That was no problem for us, so 100 agents in just over 4 weeks. But also, they don't know how many tickets they're going to get because of this acquisition, customers moving across. So we work in bricks, basically meaning thousands and thousands of processes, and we'll have agents dedicated to one brick, so they really know like a set batch of questions and problems that will arise. But yeah, that's a success story because they just couldn't afford to get that wrong. Obviously, a big acquisition of a competitor, bringing on hundreds of thousands of customers where you've got one window to get that transition and make that first 3-6 months, you've got to nail it basically to keep them as a lifelong customer. So again, sheer volume, that's easily one of the best success stories, I think.
Yeah, and I think what is interesting here is the ability to deal with ambiguity and not necessarily knowing, how many tickets you're going to get, also not knowing what's going to happen, but having the power to scale through that and power through. Yeah,
well, I mean, ask any head of e-com, head of CS, like how many tickets you're going to get in the next 30 days. They might get within 10%, which is awesome, but sometimes they won't. So again, when you have all these targets of like CSATs, response times, how many like new positive reviews, maybe like bringing down churn if you're a subscription business, that all goes out the window. If suddenly, your first response time, goes down, let's say from 4 to 8 hours, all your other metrics, unfortunately, will go the other way as well. So again, like you said, forecasting the numbers, it's impossible. So again, having that ambiguity of it could be 400, it could be 40,000, doesn't really matter too much.
That's very cool. And so, for the brands that are listening, what are the warning signs that, they should be looking out for that let them know they need to outsource their customer care?
Yeah, there's various depending on the size of the business, but I think that the main ones are like, what are your like CSATs, what are your response times? So I think like being above 80% should just be like the absolute minimum, and I think that's conservative. You should aim way higher, but if you're below that, I think that's a real warning flag.
Right.
The other is like backlogs. Like, are your team coming? Are they starting work on a Monday? Because most brands aren't offering support during the weekends because. Good luck getting someone to work on a Saturday and Sunday. I don't want to do that, and I'm sure a lot of other people don't either. So if you come back on a Monday and your team take until maybe Tuesday or till the end of Monday to clear that backlog, it's probably a sign that you should outsource some tickets over the weekend or extend some coverage, because otherwise, if you've got an issue with your product Friday evening and you're waiting till Tuesday, I know that's only 1 and a bit working day, still 4 days.
Yeah.
So you're going to get frustrated. You've put all this time and effort to acquire a customer, goes out the window. So they're the kind of two main ones. I would say also like seasonality. Like every brand will have this different. Literally, obviously, most of e-com it's all or nothing come Q4, as kind of we all know for most e-commerce brands.
Yeah.
But what do you do right now? Do you just get everyone else answering tickets? Do you hire temps? We're talking to a brand at the moment where they hire 80 part-time students during Q4. So if you think about how the costs and the overhead, and that's obviously a large, example, the time, the effort, and the cost to hire, train, a lot of those people are going to have to be let go because it's a temporary basis anyway. You've got to train them. A lot of them are going to take weeks and weeks to get up to speed, best case, or you could just eliminate all of that. So again, like, what are your pain points? I would also, maybe one thing that's come up recently, so look at like the wellness and like morale of your like CS team. Like, are they burnt out? I had a meeting with a brand yesterday and the founder was awesome. She was like, to be honest, like, we might not need this now, but I just want to give like the guys a bit of a break, so when they come in on a Monday they're not like pulling their hair out. And I think that's what a great way to look at it. You're going to retain your employees a lot more, you're going to give them more onus and responsibility, but also from like a brand point of view, you're just going to offer much better customer service. But obviously, and we'll probably go on to this, you've got to find the right partner, which is always the challenge, because there's a bit of a negative perception towards outsourcing CS for various reasons. But I'd say they're the leading indicators on why or if you should consider outsourcing, I'd say.
And so, you touched a little bit on Q4 being, sort of a peak time for all the e-commerce brands.
Yeah, exactly.
When do brands need to start, some sort of process? Is it come Q4? Is it Q3?
As in, when to outsource?
Exactly.
Well, it's going to depend on how you outsource, right? Because you might work with an offshore company where, in the greatest respect, people are being paid obscenely small amounts of money because it's in a cheap laboured country, where you're going to have to spend a lot of time with them training your processes, because it's not going to be tech driven. They're going to be in call centres. You're basically going from scratch. Then you're going to get companies who are like more tech driven, where like ultimately you can bypass those processes, where it's not so short. But for most brands, it's going to be a couple months out. For us, we typically onboard a brand 1 to 2 weeks is kind of what we aim for. Obviously, if we're onboarding 50, 60 agents, that might be a little bit more than 2 weeks. That might be more 3 to 4 weeks, like the Conto example. But that's typically when I would start thinking about it. But for maybe like an SMB or a startup, you could have the luxury where you might only need to hire 1 or 2 temps, right? Or you could outsource more last minute because the number of tickets is lower, that the amount of processes in place. And maybe something to always look at is similar use cases. Because like I said, although e-commerce is transferable, every brand will have something different, even if it's just the type of like tech stack, whether it's Zendesk instead of Gorgeous or vice versa, or Skio, Recharge, whatever it could be. Like, those things matter, and try and get a partner that can do like for like, i.e. if you're Gorgeous, Shopify and Recharge, make sure they've got brands using the exact same, and then the chances are they've got all those processes already in place, which makes your life a lot easier, and then you can do it a little bit more last minute as opposed to months in advance.
And so this is a fun question.
Okay.
Can you give us a few examples of, maybe the worst customer care that you may have seen, and also some recommendations to help brands improve on that?
Yeah, I think the one that always comes to mind is subscriptions.
Okay.
Because I think people are like traps. Like there are a lot, and I'm not going to name them because we'll get in a lot of trouble.
No naming names.
But there are a lot of brands out there who, unfortunately trap customers in subscriptions where they're ultimately not doing themselves much justice. I think we always talk about like proactive support, not reactive. And it's like, if you've got a first-time customer, and I'll give you a real example, like a personal example. So Huel, awesome brand. I remember the first time I bought Huel, when my subscription was up for renewal, I had too much. And I got an email, like an automated email saying, hey, just want to make sure you're about to get charged in a few days. If you've got too much, we recommend, postponing. And I thought, what like a good example of CS. And the reason that comes to mind is because we work with a lot of subscription brands and we meet with a lot of subscription brands. And I think the problem is they're not transparent. They don't create a frictionless process for customers. So my recommendation would make it as easy as possible for customers to subscribe, be extremely transparent. Like, don't put anything in your T's and C's on like a cooling off period that's just gonna get a lot of like negative traction when they come back and say, hey, I didn't realize I was now locked in for 3 months. So yeah, I think that the subscription is one. There's actually something that we've started doing with a few subscription brands, which I think it's been well received with customers, is that when someone does want to cancel, there's a reason to it. And what a lot of companies do is they'll go back and forth like, well, hang on, like let's try and keep you on a discount, and it's frustrating. Again, it's brand dependent, but what we do with a lot of our subscription brands is cancel their subscription like straight away, but tell them like, hey, just so you know, if you let us know by X date, like in an email, it'll be reactivated. But in the meantime, can you tell us why? And then sometimes you get that product feedback on why they're cancelling. The other example would be, instead of just cancelling off the bat, and again, it's just depending on how a brand wants to run this process, and we'll recommend what's going to work best, is just move their renewal date like 2 weeks and say, hey, like I know you want to cancel. We've pushed it 2 weeks. Can you just tell us why? Like, why do you want to cancel? And then if you don't hear anything, we'll have an automated process that goes in and counts it anyway, so no one loses. But what you're doing is you're giving them the chance to, unsubscribe themselves, basically. But yeah, I think subscriptions is always the way. But again, across all e-commerce, just a lack of transparency is what really annoys customers, right?
Definitely, really good examples. I feel seen.
Yeah, I'm sure you can remember a similar example. We all can. It's CS,
For sure. And so on sort of the KPIs that, for example, the heroes at Onepilot look at, and also the pilots, what should a successful customer care team be looking out for in terms of, performance indicators?
So I think from like a quantitative point of view, like what are like your CSATs? Like I said, like 80% should be the absolute minimum. If you want to take your CSR really seriously, it should be above 90%, but anything below 80 is like an absolute red flag. Like there's issues there, basically. Also response times. So are you taking more than a day to like respond to your customers? That's that's a red flag. I think anything more than 6 hours, I would say, is a negative. And I'd say the most important one is like an omni-channel experience. Like I don't want to go through live chat and wait like 20 minutes for someone. I want to pick up the phone. I know it's going to take 2 minutes to hammer out. I just want to ask them a question before I buy it because it's a considered purchase, or like, I've got a question about the subscription terms because it's not clear. I just want to speak to a person. And unfortunately, a lot of companies won't offer support because it's hard to do in-house, or they won't offer a live chat experience. It would just be email. So I almost think not every customer is going to want the same type of experience, whether that's pre-sale questions or post-sale related, transactional type issues. So I think that's the kind of indicator that maybe your CS could be better. Like, what other channels could you be offering, I would say?
So essentially, quality of response, quality of satisfaction, omni-channel being where your customer is and meeting them where they are.
Exactly, and look at it from like a qualitative point of view. Like, spend time looking into your reviews. Like I always find it funny, right? Like you see a review and you go, it's 5-star. I had this really annoying issue, but I got on the phone and I spoke to, John or Sarah, and they were awesome, and they helped me figure it out, and I couldn't be any happier. I've still unsubscribed, but you get a good review and you don't lose that potential future customer. So again, a lot of brands don't even respond to their reviews, which I think's criminal, to be honest. Like, not literally, but like, go in, like, respond to your customers, make them feel heard, whether it's good or bad, and use that and share it back with the team. So another area where you can level up your CS for sure. Like, look at what's happening and respond, most importantly.
Great recommendations. And so, if we're looking at very large brands that operate in quite a few countries, which is super common when it comes to e-commerce, how do you guys manage that complexity with your customers, the different languages, the different maybe time zones even?
So, I mean, doing it is really hard, like, internally, and it's a great question, but how we do it, to answer it, we just use native teams. So, for example, a brand that's shipping into France, the UK, Germany, all 3 different languages, culturally all very different, will have heroes only working with and interacting with customers in those markets. And that's really our kind of, well, not secret sauce, but what we really prioritize is that, if I'm sitting in Berlin and I'm communicating German to a customer support rep, I want to talk to someone who's also in Germany. He's probably more likely going to understand, because there's that native language piece, but also from like a cultural point of view, it's, a little bit simpler. How we set up is really simple. We just have like a dedicated team for each market.
Okay.
So it's almost like, obviously integrated with one another in terms of like set processes, but the person delivering that message, the person overseeing those heroes, is also, native to that country.
And so the process of localizing all the content, is that usually long, short? How does it go?
I mean, the ops team will, I'm for saying it's not long. I'm sure there are things that take longer than others, but it's, I guess, for like a large account, we might start in English because it's like a happy medium to start with, and then we might translate. But the most important part is the operations associate and ops manager who work closely on that particular market will have that for a dedicated. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, recently launched in the Netherlands, we'll have a team dedicated in the Netherlands, a team dedicated in Germany, whereas a lot of companies it might actually be just one. But that's the idea, that not just the heroes, but our point of contacts who, interact and train the heroes and that type of thing, they're also native to those markets. So there's no, like Chinese whispers, like the communications black and white and clear as such.
And so, with you guys being actually part of the brand's team, I'm guessing data and security and privacy are a huge topic. How do you guys work around that?
So we have an awesome person called Manon, I'll give her a shout. She's awesome. She's like our data
shout out to Manon.
Legend, and every company should have a Manon. But yeah, ultimately, so she leads everything on the data GDPR side, but we have to be basically, and it goes back to the earlier topic of like cockpit, so tracking what are those interactions, what are they doing, but also accesses. So in terms of like all of our agreements, it means that like we can legally go in and things are covered, so we can go in and access relevant tools and platforms. But it's the most important thing, it's dependent on the brand. Like when, a lot of people think when you outsource, you need to be all in, it's got to be every process, or it's got to be all tickets. And what we're trying to like educate like people within e-commerce is like, draw a blank canvas. What do you want to outsource? Is it phone, because phone's a real headache? Or is it live chat, because you just don't have the internal team to stand there? And ultimately, the language, the channel, the time, and the processes, it's a blank canvas. That'll depend on the accesses, which will then depend on what things we need to access from a data and security point of view. But yeah, I think we are obviously fully compliant, 'cause you have to be. Of
course.
Otherwise.
Manon makes sure of it.
Exactly. Shout out Manon. Exactly.
Wonderful. And so, in terms of being an expansion manager, because I think this is a role that's becoming more and more prominent. Well, what's your role in helping companies increase their revenue, reduce customer acquisition costs, and basically, what do you do?
Yes, I mean, my role is really simple. It's to, make Onepilot as successful as it's been in France, but in the UK. Bottom line, that's my role. In terms of how we actually do it, it's really about helping companies do more with less. Like I said, no one wants fixed costs, they want variable. And the model where it is so flexible, and again, it's just getting out there, whether it's events, meeting, with customers, friends of friends, all that type of thing. It's just letting people know that it is really flexible. Like, you can start here, you can scale up, scale down. And I think that's really where the need comes with Onepilot, because typically when you outsource, you're paying someone per hour. They're not always answering tickets, so you're paying them to wait, basically. Whereas that model of price per ticket, follow that curvature, whether it's like that, like with Hagley West, or whether it's down in Q1 for like a Q4 type e-commerce brand. So the role itself is just grow in the UK, basically.
And also growing in a sector that I think historically isn't viewed as super sexy.
No, but I joked about this before we came on, but like, when I first, so as you mentioned, my background is working with e-commerce brands, nearly 5 years in the previous company, and when I first came across Onepilot, I was like, outsourcing support is not really a sexy topic. I don't really think that's for me. And I met with Pierre, one of our founders, and he explained how the product works and the value prop, and I was like, this is actually awesome. It's really interesting, and that's really what I enjoy most about the product and the company. It's like, people talk about CS, outsourcing, can be a bit of a dirty word, it's not that sexy. And then you get into it, they're like, it's actually quite cool. Like, I sell to customers who are like 40 plus mums, and now, like typical demographic, and then as a brand, I can now get like cool stay-at-home mums acting as heroes. So it's like a matchmaking. So it's not just, in a call center like the traditional outsourcing. It's freelance, it's from home, they pick and choose how they work. And we're trying to make it more sexy than the normal outsourcing. And we hate being referred to as a BPO as well, because there's a million of them, and we're not just an ordinary BPO. So that's kind of the model we're trying to get. Well, that's what we're trying to do, basically.
And also, I feel like you're putting everyone, the brand, the heroes, in a situation where they're comfortable and they win, basically.
Yeah, when I first met Lucas, so Lucas, one of our co-founders, really early into like Bolt and Voice, so like in terms of like ops side, just he's an absolute weapon. Like he spoke about like answering tickets is just like not fun. So just being able to like outsource that is like is a good thing. Sorry, go back to the question. I had a real important point there. I've slipped.
What was I even saying?
There was a reason.
So everybody wins. You're putting everyone.
Let's do that. Let's do that again.
So even in this topic, you're putting everyone in a position where they're winning. The brand is able to outsource. The heroes are able to, grow their expertise and also have control over their day-to-day. That's really great as a company.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, so one of our co-founders, Lucas, when I first met him, Lucas really early into like Void, Bolt, so he's seen the growth of, software companies, and from an upside, he's just a weapon. It kind of goes back to, I remember him word for word saying like, what is a flexible offering like for outsourcing support? Like, if you had to draw a blank canvas and it's plug and play, it's price per ticket, so it aligns in that variable cost piece, it's scalable, it's 24/7, so you can pick and choose, when it is, and there's no commitment, and we genuinely don't think we could make it any more better for, in terms of the offering. And obviously, like you said, the heart of everything we do is put the heroes first, because if we don't have them, we can't do it. It won't work. But then also vice versa, we have to really make sure the product keeps getting better and better, so we can use native agents that's still affordable, that works for the heroes, but ultimately is still scalable and flexible. But that's really what it comes down to, like, what is a flexible offering, and we think we've nailed it. But obviously we're going to get better, but that's really what it comes back to.
So speaking of getting better,
yeah,
do you have any insights on the future plans of Onepilot? Can you give us a glimpse into upcoming development or expansion goals?
So I think we have clients in the US already. But again, it's going back to the point on like, how do you grow in a new market? We have a lot of brands that are already in the US, so it was quite nice for us to say, hey, like, let's take your US tickets, show that we can do it, even though, the US is very different to the UK, but what helps is both English speaking, makes it a little bit easier than like going into like the Netherlands or Germany or France, for example. But that's probably the next thing on everyone's mind. Like, once we've nailed the UK, probably maybe setting up shop in the US when that happens. I don't know, but that'll probably be the next thing. I think the other side, I maybe can't use exact examples because I won't be welcome back in the office, but I think in terms of how we leverage AI and how we take that next to the next level is quite exciting, because it's on everyone's mind. And if we can take that typical 5 to 6 minute touch point and do it in 3 or 4, maybe do it in 45 seconds. Like, how amazing is that for the hero? So they can sell more tickets and they can earn more. But we can also continue to bring the price down for brands as well and make it even more flexible than it already is. So that's the goal anyway.
And for brand customers, having their answers even quicker.
Well, exactly. It's all about delivering the right response at the right time. That's, human touch point where necessary. That's ultimately the end goal, basically. Yeah.
Great. Well, this has been super insightful. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on E-commerce Legends. Well, thank you so much for your insights, George. It's been lovely speaking with you and learning more about Onepilot, the offering, and of course the heroes. I appreciate you, getting into trouble so that you could
Not
share
too
with
much
our
trouble,
listeners.
I hope. Yeah, it's okay.
And yeah, hopefully we'll see you around.
We will definitely. No, I've been really enjoyed it. I was just saying, I've forgotten we were being recorded. So yeah, no, really enjoyed it and great to be on. Yeah, appreciate you having us.
Thank you so much.